In last week's Parsha, in Parshas Ki Seitzei, we discussed about the importance of sneas, loosely translated as modesty. We had two sessions, major sessions, involving this, because the pasuk says, "V'hayamach anecha kadosh v'yir b'chayir v'azdover v'yamach anecha kadosh v'shab macharecha." Pasuk in Parshas Ki Seitzei. Uncharacteristically, we had two sessions of Parsha, each 45 minutes. And now we will have a third and final session and try to get everything done. We ended last time briefly with the beautiful presentation from Rabbi Chaim Freelander in the Sifsei Chaim, excuse me, on the Midos V'Avodas Hashem Chelik Beis, page Tov Kuf Samach Hey, is around 10 pages, a whole chapter, a whole section on Sneas. Sneas isn't just one of the Midas Tovos. It's not just one of the good attributes that we have, that a person has to have. Rather, this is a mafteach, this is the key for all of our midos that we have. The Gemara relates about the story of Rachel and Rabbi Akiva. Originally, Rabbi Akiva wasn't always a rabbi. The Gemara in Ksuba Samach Beis teaches us Rabbi Akiva was the employee, he was the shepherd of a person named Kalva Savur. Rabbi Akiva was not a big Talmud Chacham. He was not a big Torah scholar at all. And this Kalva Savua, this billionaire, the Gemara explains in another place, anyone who was hungry like a dog will come out satisfied. That's why Kelev means Kelev, a dog. Savua means satiated, he'd be satisfied. This man had a daughter whose name was Rachel. Rachel looked at one of the many employees of her father and saw that this Akiva had potential. She said, even though he knows no Torah, I want to marry him so that he'll learn and become great. The question is, what was Rachel thinking? Daughter of a billionaire, she could get any shidduch she wants. She can marry whoever she wants. She could have married someone who already knew a lot of Torah. What exactly did Rachel see in this young Akiva? So the Gemara says 4 words, Chazisei dahavi sniyu maili. Rachel saw that he had sneas, he had modesty, umaili, which we could translate as he had good midos, good attributes. That's what it is. There are a lot of people who have that, though. Rather, that because of this characteristic trait of modesty that Rabbi Akiva possessed, he said, he's got it all. And how correct was she? We see from over here that tznius is the foundation for all midos, and also for becoming a Talmud Chacham. Why? What is so special about tznius? Once we understand the root, then we can understand practically what is so special about tznius. The Gemara then the Makos and Chav Gimel, with Beis, Chav Daled Amar Aleph a little bit. Chav Daled Amar Aleph is the main topic over there. Quotes Rabbi Samai, who says that there's 613 mitzvahs because Torah Sivalanu Moshe, the gematria of Torah 611. We heard 2 directly from Hashem, but then the Gemara continues over there and says either that they couldn't handle all the mitzvahs, or they were trying to figure out which mitzvahs encompass all of the other mitzvahs, which are the most important. They tried to narrow it down, a bridge version. Or if a person is just beginning, is converting, is starting with Torah and mitzvahs, which one should he pick up? The Gemara then later on says, Ba Micha ve'amidon al shalosh. Micha came along and said, everything, all of the mitzvahs could be encompassed in the following pasuk. What does Hashem want from us? Kiem asois mishpat. Hashem wants mishpat. V'avas chesed, Hashem wants chesed from us, kindness. V'hetzne lecha sim elokecha, and Hashem wants us to go modestly with Him. He wants sneeze. In order to understand this Gemara, we have to quote another Gemara. Gemara in Sukkah Mem Tez says, "Asois mishpat zeh hadin." This is talking about judgment. We're not talking about a judge over here. We're talking about we have to judge our own acts, what we do, in terms of bein adam l'chavero, interpersonal relationships, and how we act. We have to judge that over there. If we upset someone else, we speak derogatory information, lashon hara, or if we wake someone up when they're sleeping, or if we disturb someone when he's sleeping, we're singing loud at night, we're making a lot of noise when people are sleeping so that people can't fall asleep. That's lacking mishpat. That's a fundamental area of the Torah. Interpersonal relationships. After all, the Torah could be broken down into two main categories: bein adam v'makom, bein adam v'chavero. Between man and between us and Hashem. We need to act in our lives, conduct our lives according to mishpat. Any way that we any way that we divert ourselves, even small, from these interpersonal relationships, that is a lack of mishpat. Number 2, out of the 3 mitzvahs that are crucial, that encompass everything, avas chesed, kindness. We have to be kind. Okay? Kindness is better than tzedakah in 3 ways, the Gemara says. Tzedakah, the charity, could only be with one's money. Kindness could be not just with one's money, but also his body. Everyone could do acts of kindness. Tzedakah, you give charity, that's only you're giving to poor people. But chesed, kindness, you could do whether someone's poor or someone's very wealthy. Tzedakah is only for people who are alive. Kindness you could do even if someone's not alive. Kindness, you smile at someone, you say, "How are you today? How are you feeling?" It's small, but it's fundamental. Chesed isn't limited to bein adam l'chavero, between man and man. Chesed also extends to bein adam l'makom. Spiritual kindness, helping other people, is doing the will of Hashem. So we see how fundamental both mishpat and chesed is, but how could we explain the continuation of the Gemara? Gemara said, "V'hatzne leches im elokecha." Modesty, that's what is so important. What is so important about modesty? I mean, we understand that it's important to be modest. But that's what it is. We understand tznius. Typically, people use the term when we're talking about covering a body. But why is this so fundamental? What exactly is so important about this? It's a little bit more of a gray area. It's more unclear than the chesed and the mishpat. The Gemara in Brachos on Samach Beis says, "Ahu safdana denachas kaimeder of Nachman." There was a certain eulogizer, the person who says the eulogy, okay, and he went in front of Rav Nachman. Omar, and he eulogized someone and said, "Hi senua bercharsav havi." This person was modest. That was his eulogy. That was his whole eulogy. What a modest person. He stepped down from the pulpit, from the podium. What type of eulogy is that?
Who said this?
He was modest. The guy who gave the eulogy, it was his whole eulogy. He got up there and he said, this person was modest, and he stepped down.
Yeah, but it's random people.
No, yeah, you eulogize someone, whatever. But this
Right.
is what he did. He was known. He was, you go to the people who they know how to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So Rav Nachman responded to this. He said, it's a very brief speech, but that's not what I'm here for. How could you say such a thing? Rav Nachman said. At Aliyas v'hadi lebeis hakisei? Did you go with him to the restroom when he was using the restroom? Isanua ilo, that you could now testify and state as to whether he was modest or not? Because the Brisa says, Ein koidin, senua el lemisha, senua beis hakisei. Only someone, you can only call someone modest if he's modest in the restroom. What over here is Rav Nachman saying? It seems like we're mixing two separate areas together. Number one is sneas, and number two, the halachas of a restroom. What does being modest in the bathroom have to do with another? Modesty, sneas, is typically on the way that we dress. What exactly is the connection between sneas and the bathroom? In order to answer these questions, we're going to have to quote yet another Gemara. The pasuk in Shmuel Aleph Chavdalet teaches us one of the most famous episodes of David HaMelech. Anyone who goes to Ein Gedi, it's a well-known story in Israel. Shaul was chasing David, trying to kill him. It's a whole discussion as to why. Not for now. And Shaul accidentally encountered the exact cave that David HaMelech was in, but he didn't even realize. He was unaware. Well-known medrash, because there was a spider that spun its web there, and Shaul thought that it was inhabited. And then David said, "Oh, now I understand why Hashem created spiders." Okay, a lot of Torahs on that. We could have a spidery discussion, a sticky discussion about that another time. And Shaul went to relieve himself in the cave over there. And what did David do? David took the corner of his garment off of Shaul. He cut it off. After Shaul left the cave and already went far, David announced, "I could have killed you." And the Gemara in Brachos on Samach Beis Beis relates, David told Shaul, "Min haTorah ben hariga ata." From the Torah, I was allowed to kill you. You were a walking dead man. I could have killed you. Because you were a roidiv ata. You were coming to kill me. V'habal lahargecha hishkim laharga. Someone's trying to kill you, you could kill him in self-defense if there's no other way to stop him. So why then didn't David kill him? So Gemara says, Elosnius shahaisa b'cha hi chasalecha. David HaMelech saw that Shaul was modest. By the way, let's remind ourselves, who did Shaul come from? What did we say last session? Who remembers? Shaul was a descendant of?
Rachel with the sneer.
Yeah, because of the sneers. Okay? And who descended from David? From Shaul, excuse me? Because of his modesty? Esther. Lashon Hester, hidden. Sneers. So we clearly see over here that Shaul had incredible modesty when he was relieving himself, even though he thought no one was there. It was a cave. So we see the importance of sneers of Shaul. So we see a connection between sneos and going to the restroom. Just want to add something over here off the daf. The Chai Moshe and Simon Gimel asked the question, why is the restroom called the Beis HaKisei? The house of the chair. This is where they say, I'm going to go to the throne, a man's throne. They joke. Why is it called the Beis HaKisei? It comes from the language of mechusa, to be covered, because you have to be modest over there. Question is, what type of compliment is this? Furthermore, if Shaul was Chayiv Misa, why didn't David finish the job? How did the sneas exactly protect Shaul? Furthermore, Shaul had a lot of positive attributes. Why specifically this attribute of sneas is this highlighted? In order to answer this question, we're going to have to quote yet another Gemara. The Gemara in Yuma and Lamed Tes teaches us that in the time of Shimon HaTzadik, who was the Kohen Gadol for 40 years, there was tremendous bracha in the Beis HaMikdash. Tremendous. When it came to the Omer, the Shesei HaLechem, the Lechem Aponim, and the Gemara over there states, Kol Kohen Shemagio Kazayis Yesh Oichel V'Sava V'Yesh Oichel Moiser. You would eat just a small amount of bread, there would be leftovers. Tremendous. Oh, what is a chus? So there's small amount of bread, it would have tremendous success, there would be tremendous. And all of the Kohanim, they would have enough from the Lechem Aponim. So, tremendous amount of abundance. And that was it. But once Shimon HaTzadik passed, that bracha left. They didn't have that bracha anymore. Wasn't good anymore. And they would have very rationed portions. Small amounts. They wouldn't have much. If they would have the size of a bread that was the size of a bean, they'd be in good shape. That's all they got, a very, very small amount. They have less than a kazayis. And the Gemara over there says, Hasnuyim moishkim es yadehem v'garganim choitvim b'loichim. Which means those who were modest, they didn't go for the lechem upon him. The gluttons, they grabbed it, they tried to get it. We have to realize over here, lechem upon him, it was a tremendous merit. Kohanim oichlun ubalim meskaprim. The Kohanim would eat it, and the owners would get atoned. We're not talking about physical consumption over here of food just to fulfill our desires, to have a nice meal. This was a spiritual consumption. So when this time came to distribute the lechem upon him, certainly all of the Kohanim who were fearful, who were righteous, wanted to merit with this very special mitzvah. But the Gemara still says that those who were manas asnuyim, moishchem esadehem, they wouldn't have it. And the Gemara says that the people who would grab the bread, they were called gargaronim, gluttons. Still, they're called chatfanim. What's the explanation over here? How is that modesty? How is that modesty? We find by Torah, here's where I think it's very interesting. The Gemara says in Moikot and Tez Zayin that one time Rebbe decreed, don't teach in the marketplace. It's not a place to teach. Divrei Torah b'seiser. Torah has to be private. You don't go in the middle of a street. You see sometimes in other religions, they go on loudspeakers, the missionaries and all of these things, and they try getting people in the streets in Times Square and in public areas. Forget about that garbage. Forget about that. It's not covered a Torah. It's not an honor for the Torah. It has to be modesty. The pasuk in Mishlei says in Yud Aleph, "Ve'es senuyim chachma." With those who are modest, that's the wisdom's going to go with. So, what is the connection between sneas and Torah? We quoted the Gemara in Sukkah before. Mem Tesem Beis, quoted again over here. Also, Mishpat is referring to din. Chesed gimul chasodim behetzen eleches. What's the hetzen eleches? To be married, zo hatzos ameis v'achnasas kal l'chapa. To be modest is when you're making a wedding or a funeral. What's the modesty over there? If what's something kal v'chomer that it's the norm to do it publicly, and still the Torah says to be modest, aka making a wedding or a funeral, something that typically you do privately and modestly, all the more so. You should have to be modest. So Rashi over there explains the connection between why specifically a wedding and a funeral. And Rashi over there explains, it says, Leches. Tov leches el beis, avil meleches el beis emish. It's better to go to the house of mourning than the house of a party, aka a wedding. It says leches in both of those scenarios, and also says mehesas leches imo kecha, to go modest with Hashem. What is the connection? Rashi explains, even when it comes to eulogizing, you have to do it in the right way, to overly exaggerate, etc. And also when it comes to the wedding, it shouldn't lead to levity over there. It should be modest. Even though a lot of times it's all public and everyone knows publicly, be modest about it. Person's helping out to make a wedding for someone. Be modest about it. Do it privately. Same thing when it comes to Torah. Maharal, in his Nesivas Oilam, in its Sivan Sniya says, wisdom, chachma, wisdom from the Torah, chachma sa Torah, is senua, is modest, is hidden. It's not revealed. It's not benigle. Even nigle, it's not revealed, so to say. Therefore, it has to be done modestly. It has to be done with tremendous modesty. And someone who is immodest, he's not going to be fitting to have the wisdom over there. Not going to happen. Explains the Sifsei Chachamim explaining this Maharal. Snias is pnimi, it's internal. It's spiritual. Don't have ulterior motives. Don't put gashmias in the picture. A lack of snias explanation is it turns into something physical. It's no longer spiritual. It has to be hidden. Someone who invests all of his energies to fix himself internally, he could acquire that wisdom, the wisdom from the Torah. To elaborate on this point, Rav Dessler in the Michtav Me'Eliyahu, Chelik Gimel, page 289, explains, if someone thinks, what will others think of me if I do this? That's already not sneas. That's already not pnimi, like the Maharal is saying. That's a bad thing. That's the difference between the two. If we say to ourselves, what will others think of me if I do this? What will others speak about me if I do this? Already it's external. It's not pnimi. That's not sneas. And therefore, if that would be the case, the mitzvah would already lose its value. Everything that we build up to today is for this point that we just mentioned. It's a tremendous point. So we see that the shayrish of sneas is pnimius. The root of modesty is being internal. Opening up our insides, not caring about what other people think about us. If we know that we're doing the right thing, forget about what others think. That's what the pasuk means. Be modest when you go with Hashem, your God. Even something that you do, like marrying someone off, that is done publicly, keep it as internal as possible, as modest as possible. Hide it. The explanation is we have to go only with Hashem. We have to ask if what we're doing right now, is Hashem happy with what we are doing right now? Who cares about what other people think? Is Hashem happy with what we are doing now? That is the golden question that we have to ask ourselves. We asked a lot of questions. The common denominator is wisdom needs to be modesty because it's internal. That's why learning in a marketplace in a public area is not good. Teaching in a marketplace, that's not good. That is external. It needs to be total internal. It's hard to do, not to stick out. We always want to be modest about whatever we do, no matter what it is. To have that modesty, not to stick out. Let's go back to the body. When it comes to our body, keep it covered. Keep it sanua, modesty over there. Because it's all about internal, it's not about external. That's the idea over here. Let's talk about the restroom. We were talking about the restroom before. Keep it internal. That's what Rav Nachman was saying, was telling the person who gave the eulogy. How do you know that he's sinius? How do you know that he's sanua, that he has modesty? Are you with him in the bathroom, aka the restroom where no one else is there? Then it shows if what we're doing is for the sake of heaven or not, that we're still being modest. That's what that shows. And that's the explanation of the Maharal. That since Shaul had that incredible modesty, no one was able to rule him. He was all internal. No one was able to kill him. Not even David. That's the explanation also with the lechem haponim. Hasinuim moishchin es yedehim. The Sinuim, you know who they were? They were modest people, and they say, it's all about internal anyways. In other words, yeah, there's a mitzvah of eating the lechem upon him. Yeah, it needs to be done in an honorable way, and it's such a special mitzvah. Yes, it's very holy. But guess what? If we're going to take, then others can't take. The main priority is that the mitzvah gets done. It doesn't have to be me. Someone else fulfills the mitzvah. They're also fulfilling Hashem's will. We're all part of the same team. Doesn't matter who fulfills the mitzvah. We're all part of the same team. And therefore, the Kohanim, they were modest. The idea of there's me, there's him, we're all the same. That concept is chitzonius. That's not sneas. That's not pnimius. If we look at it from an internal level, we'll realize we're all the same team. To conclude from all of this, we see that sneas is incredibly important when it comes to serving Hashem, avodas Hashem. And it encompasses all of the mitzvahs. Because if a person has, listen very carefully, if a person has the mitzvah of sneas, and he knows how to fulfill every mitzvah. But if someone doesn't have this mitzvah of sneas, then he's performing mitzvahs for ulterior motives, for the wrong reason. Every single mitzvah that he's doing is not being done preferably. This is why Micha said all of the mitzvahs of the Torah could be included into these three. And sneas was included in the category of mishpat and chesed, as we specified both before. Because sneas is so important. Hetzne be modest with who? Imalokecha, with Hashem. Just Hashem. Forget about what others say. This is why the Maharal explains, as well as others we saw last time, that there's a connection between modesty and having children who will become Kohanim Gedolim and serve Lifnai v'Lifnim in the Kodesh Kedoshim, which is an incredibly modest area. In order to reach the level to be able to serve in such a place, you have to be very, very modest. Work on the person would have to work on what's happening internally to make sure that it's totally for the sake of heaven. He's going all the way in. He's going lifnai v'lifnim, a level that most are not capable of reaching. Yikarehi mipeninim. The Torah is even more precious than a Kohen Gadol who's nichnas lifnai v'lifnim. The Gemara at the end of Horiyah says. This will only happen if someone has pnimius and he's involved with being modest and without ulterior motives. Ramchal writes, the Mesilas Yeshadim and the Perek Zayin, beginning of Perek Chav Gimel, sometimes that you could have the chitzonius me'oider the panimi. Externally, when we perform a mitzvah physically, that could affect us internally. But the best option is that the panimi affects the chitzoni, the internal affects the external. That's sneeze. Same thing. If we could come to an external sneeze, we could also come to an internal sneeze, which is the highest level. The main idea is don't stick out. For example, sometimes someone passes away and we attend the funeral. Everyone wants to carry the coffin. We're pushing each other and everything. Forget about it. Forget about carrying it. Because like we said before with the Lechem Apanim, who cares if we carry it or not? We are all part of the same team. Right? Like the famous expression goes, the front of the jersey is more important than the back of the jersey. Right? You could have as many, you could break every single record, but who cares if your team doesn't win? Same thing over here. Everyone thinks, I want to merit the mitzvah. I want to merit the mitzvah. No. People pushing, shoving, no. We always have to ask ourselves, is this what Hashem wants from us? We're not just talking about dress. We're talking about a lot more than that. But even when it comes to dress, what are we wearing? Are we sticking out? Is this excessive? We have to ask ourselves these questions. Do we care what other people think? We discussed a few weeks ago the story with Rabbi Akiva and the donkey. That's what Rachel was telling Rabbi Akiva. Don't care what other people think. You might be sitting at the age of 40 with a bunch of first graders learning the Aleph Beis, but guess what? Everyone's got to start somewhere. Don't care about what other people think. That's chisonius. That's a lack of sneeze. That's immodesty. That's what it comes down to over here. Nowadays, it's all too common. People are spending money. Whether they have it or not, it doesn't matter. Extravagant simchas, additions to houses, fancy cars, fancy clothing, fancy vacations. Where does this come from? It's from a lack of sneas. Forget about even if they have the money. Don't care what other people think. Life's too short. That's not sneas. Carried away. Ma yoimru habrius, everyone cares about. What will others think? That is not sneas. Someone who has pnimius, who has sneas, couldn't care less what other people think. Doesn't matter. He knows what he's doing is right. That's why sneas is so important. Ma Hashem dorish mimcha v'hatzin elecha sim lokecha. That, I think, after 3 full sessions, could properly address why sneas is one of the most fundamental mitzvahs and incredibly important. It's Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue.
Oh,
Baruch Teh.
all right. Have a nice day.
All right, you tell.